Hello. Today we'll be taking a look at creating a classroom management plan for a primary elementary classroom. Throughout this presentation, we will be looking at setting up the classroom and thinking about classroom routines, procedures, and rules within the classroom. We will also take a look at building positive relationships, consider behavior plans, and how to communicate with parents. Lastly, we will look at the beginning stages of planning to ensure we are meeting the needs of all learners. Let's begin by taking a deeper dive at setting up the learning space. This can be an exciting time for new teachers and veteran teachers. Take a moment to think about what you would like your dream classroom to look like, or consider what your classroom looks like now. Does your ideal classroom look like any of these classrooms? Will your classroom have bright colors or a specific theme? Will your students be at desks, chairs, or a different style of seating? These will be questions you will want to consider as you are planning for the beginning of the year. It is important to remember that your classroom will be yours and your students' home away from home for the next few months. Here are a few things to keep in mind when you begin setting up your classroom. You will want to consider the layout of the classroom, the transitions that will occur throughout the day, and the organization of the student materials. When thinking about the classroom layout, consider all the students you could encounter over the school year. In the primary grades, teachers may designate different locations within the classroom, such as a carpet area, an independent workspace, at tables or desks, and areas for rotations or centers to occur. Some early educators have also begun incorporating the use of cool-down corners with the rise of students that need support with self-regulating their emotions. In my classroom, my cool-down corner consists of foam letters on the wall to use as extra padding in case a student gets upset. There are also a variety of resources students can use to look at to help them identify the emotions they are experiencing. In the cool-down corner are small fidgets, beanbag chairs, stuffed animals, books, and posters, and a strategy toolkit with flip cards to help the students express how they are feeling. Some teachers in the intermediate grades also like to incorporate differential seating for their students to use. Consider how this could be managed in your room, or if this is an avenue you might want to explore later in the school year. Once you've considered areas for students to work, take a look at how much space there is for students to walk throughout the room. Is there enough space between chairs that you and your students will be able to safely move around without tripping? If not, you will want to try to rearrange to accommodate the space to meet the needs of all students. While I was working on my undergraduate courses, one of the things I dreaded about going into classes was the fact that I was unable to maneuver around some of the classrooms to speak with students due to cramped learning spaces. Any time that I rearranged tables or set up my classroom layout, I tried to determine first where all the learning will likely occur, and then how close students' tables and chairs are. I try to make sure that students can see the learning area directly and that I can meet every student without tripping over another student's chair. The classroom environment should be kept tidy and organized. One way to ensure that the classroom stays organized is by labeling areas within the classroom where items belong. In the primary grades, a visual picture with an English and Spanish label can be beneficial to students. Students that are unable to read yet can use the picture to help them determine what the book could be about. For individuals that are able to read, can read in their preferred language. Labels can also be changed to meet the student's native language. Students that are blind can also use braille markings on the cards to accommodate the needs of the learner. Students will also use a lot of paper throughout the school year. As the teacher, you will also collect a lot of student work, record anecdotal notes, checklists, or rubrics to assess student growth. Try to limit the number of papers within the classroom. This will eliminate extra clutter within the room. What also might look like clutter in the classroom will also seem like clutter when sending home papers to parents. Be mindful of what is being sent home. Something else to consider when setting up the classroom is the decor you decide to use. An overabundance of colors and items hanging from the ceiling may be overwhelming for students with ADHD. However, a room that is limited with bare walls can be viewed by students to be boring and dull. It is recommended that teachers decorate portions of the classroom using the work that students have completed or collaborated on. In my classroom at the beginning of the year, I start off by hanging posters and anchor charts the students have worked on so that they can refer back to. As the year goes on and students become more confident with their writing abilities, I begin showcasing their work on individual clips inside and outside of the classroom for other students to be able to see the work that they are doing. This provides students the sense of feeling accountable for their work and presenting something they are proud of for others to be able to see. It is also a reflection of the skills the student is able to do. The next area to consider when planning the layout of the classroom is how students will be moving throughout the room. The flow of the classroom should move smoothly so that there are no traffic jams. Managing transitions will need to be prepared and planned for ahead of time. Not all students will be able to go get their items all at one time. This could cause issues among students and a lot of time will be lost. Here is a list of several ideas that can be used to help manage students' transitions within the classroom and around the building. When getting student materials, teachers can call students in small groups. This will eliminate the number of students that are getting their items all at one time. Teachers could also select a student leader or captain to get all of the items needed for their table. This would also eliminate a lot of students getting up and moving around the room. Students will also need to learn how to make a line to be able to move around the school building, and in the event of an emergency, forming a line can be challenging for some students, so a visual explanation might be useful. In the past, I have found that using a pipe cleaner to model what a line should look like is beneficial. I also model what happens when a student is not in the line and what that could look like. You can also incorporate a time to have students practicing getting in line within the classroom before venturing out into the school building. Students can walk in the line in small groups, or you can practice in the whole group. Another way to have students practice getting in line can be to sing a lineup song that goes over all of the rules and expectations for the hall. This is a friendly way to remind the students of the rules and expectations they should be following when in the hallway. Here is a short video of a teacher showing her expectations for how her students get in line quickly and quietly. During small group rotations, teachers and students can decide on a cleanup song that everyone likes. When the cleanup song comes on, students can stop what they are doing and clean up their rotations to make for a smooth transition. Another strategy that can be used for transition is to set up a visual time for all students to see. When the time gets down to 1 minute, all students will stop what they are doing and clean up. Teachers can use this signal, such as a doorbell, a wind chime, to alert the students that it is time to clean up. Organizing classroom materials is ultimately up to the teacher. Some teachers find using individual book bins at the student's workspace works well. Other teachers designate locations in the classroom that students will have to go to retrieve their materials. No matter which way you choose, keep in mind the longer the transition, the less time you have to teach. This will prevent you from being able to maximize the instructional time you have. Consider thinking about items the students will need all day, such as pencils or crayons. Will those items be stored in soft pouches, hard cases, or in a community bin? I prefer using soft pouches for each student. The pouches have zippers to store the students' materials and prevent spills in the case they are dropped. I also like to use the soft pouches to store the students' QR codes on. It is easily accessible for the students to access when they are trying to log into their Chromebooks. The soft pouches also encourage students to be responsible for their classroom materials. Kriegel 2013 describes varieties of ways to organize materials, such as personal mailboxes, book bins, or 3 container compartments for group work. Now that we've discussed some strategies that can be used when thinking about the classroom layout, I would like you to consider a new strategy that you found that you would like to try in your classroom, or list a different strategy that you have found to be beneficial. As you take a moment to jot down your ideas, Corinthians 14:33 states, "For God is not a God of confusion, but of peace." This verse represents orderliness and accessibility within the classroom. By providing students an organized space with minimal distractions can encourage students' engagement within the lessons, but also providing students accessibility to materials needed to complete assignments will also encourage participation and engagement. Classroom routines and procedures will be a large part of how the daily activities happen in the classroom. When creating classroom routines and procedures, be specific and clear on how you will want the routine to work. You will also want to stay consistent with the routine so that the students can anticipate what will be coming next in their day. When introducing a routine, model for the students what you want the students to be able to do. You might want to model this consistently at least for the first week. You might then begin removing the visual support and encourage the students with a friendly reminder. Eventually, once the students are in the routine, visuals and reminders will fade altogether. Along with the building the classroom routines and procedures, you will also be promoting students' independence level, which will be a critical skill students will use in the future. When establishing the routines and procedures in the classroom, keep in mind students will need frequent reminders and reteaches to get to the desired results. It is important to remain patient with students. Just as you are adjusting to your new group of students, they are also adjusting to you. Some areas to consider when establishing routines and procedures outside of academics is how the students will be entering the classroom, engaging in morning routine, looking over the class schedule, going to lunch, and how they will be dismissed. Kemeny 2025 suggests being consistent with the routines and procedures within the classroom by starting off with focusing on how students will enter the classroom and their morning routine. The first day of school will look different as far as timing and sticking to the schedule. However, the first day can be used to model how students will enter the classroom and what procedures they need to do upon arriving to the classroom. Begin by getting students acclimated to the room and how they will unpack their belongings in the morning. On the first day, you will spend most of the morning showing students where their hook or cubby is, sorting through student supplies, and making sure students get breakfast if they need it. Be specific with how you want backpacks to be hung. As the weather gets colder, encourage students to put their coats in their backpacks and zip their backpacks. You may also want to have a plan for students that walk to school and could have rain gear. Some teachers suggest having towels available in the classroom for students to lay their raincoats and umbrellas on. Students that have lunchboxes can get their lunchboxes set out in their cubbies or under their hooks for a quick grab and go when it is time for lunch. Some students might also come to class with a water bottle. You may want to create a system of where students put water bottles for the day. Water bottles on the table have a higher risk of accidentally being spilled on technology devices and class work. Once students have unpacked their belongings, I ask the students to turn their folder or binder in to the morning bin and make their lunch choice. This is also another task that students will be able to do on their own. I use magnetic strips with the students' names on it. Students will look at the choice and move their tag into the container they wish to have. I have also seen other classes that post student names on interactive boards and the student can slide their lunch choice. This is also a great way to take attendance. Once students have made their lunch choice, I send them to breakfast. Each school does breakfast differently. Some students have to arrive before school starts and eat breakfast in the cafeteria. Other schools have students go to the cafeteria and get their breakfast and bring it back to the classroom to eat. And other schools have cafeteria workers deliver the breakfast to the classroom and students eat in the classroom before the day begins. I model for students how to open their own breakfast and assist if the student is really struggling to open their breakfast. I also model how students should lay their breakfast out and clean their breakfast up to avoid any messy spills. If time allows, or a student is not interested in having breakfast in the morning, I provide students morning work. The morning work reflects the skills the students have learned from the day before. I use this time to monitor students that may have struggled with a concept from the day before and provide extra supports to the student. In the beginning, you may be modeling these behaviors a lot, but once students have a couple of weeks to practice the routines, they may only need a few reminders or you can project a slide with the steps the student should complete before the bell rings. Once the bell rings, think about what the students will do next. Some teachers decide to do morning routine in the morning, while others have found it is more beneficial to occur directly after recess or lunch. There are different viewpoints of how to run a morning routine. Some teachers put a heavy emphasis on calendar, focusing the student's attention on months of the year, days of the week, and knowing what day comes before and after the day we are on. There is also a heavy emphasis on weather and identifying the seasons we're in. Others use this time for a morning message to encourage students to provide more time to practice their reading skills and strategies they have learned. All of those strategies are beneficial for students to know and be aware of. It will also depend on what is allowed for your school district. I highlight a student for calendar once a week who shares the month, the year, and the date. The student then sings the days of the week song and writes the date on the board. I assign a weather person to share what the weather will be for the day and have them graph the weather to compare the different types of weather we have had this school year. For morning message, I pick a different student each day to point and read the words to the class. I personally like to end my morning routine with a wiggle break. This allows all of us to wake up a little more and get us ready for the start of the day. For all of the routines in the morning routine, I model them for the first week so students have an understanding of what they will do when they get their job. I will then assist on the first day of their job and back assistants all as the week progresses. Another area that is important for you and your students to discuss is the class schedule. The schedule should be the same every day unless there are special events. The schedule should be placed at the front of the room for all students to be able to see. Each activity that students will complete throughout the day should have a visual picture next to the name of the subject. There also should be a time listed next to the learning block. This will allow students to anticipate what will occur throughout the day. Some students with learning disabilities require a visual schedule as part of their IEP. In my classroom, I have a magnetic schedule that I pull down throughout the day to show students where we are in the day and what is coming next. I then put the schedule up for the next day after students have left. For any special events, I mark a star beside them and write the time to show the students there is a new activity for the day. Most students find lunch, recess, and dismissal to be their favorite parts of the day. However, even though the students might not be directly with you during those times, students still have the expectations and procedures they will need to follow through these times. It might take some time out of your day, but if you take the time to go over the rules and expectations with your students for lunch, the lunch assistants will greatly appreciate it. You will need to check with your colleague on your team or with your administration on the procedures for lunch. Some schools encourage you to line the students up in groups. For instance, all of the A buyers are together and all of the B buyers are together, and so forth. Other schools will have all the students go to the tables and dismiss students from the tables depending on what they are getting from lunch. You will also want to inform students that they need to remain seated during lunch. Encourage students to raise their hand if they need assistance or if they need to use the restroom. Students should also be made aware of how you will line them up upon your return to the cafeteria, whether it be with a lunch assistant or that you will line them up. Depending on when you visit the playground throughout the day, it is also important to review playground rules with the students. For instance, hands should be kept to themselves. They should swing or slide on their bottom or keeping their eyes up when playing or running to avoid running into other students. Visual representations of doing these activities can be beneficial for students to relate back to. Dismissal time can be very stressful. I recommend finding out how all students will be getting home on the first day of school at back to school night. When modeling for students how to pack up for the evening, show them locations in the classroom on where you would like them to pack up and where they should go when they are finished. Some teachers have students wait in line, other teachers have students go to different locations in the classroom to sit with their dismissal group, and other teachers have students return back to their seats. This is up to you. You will also need to closely monitor where students are supposed to go if they are to ride a bus, car rider, walker, or attend an after-school program. You may need to walk the students to all of these locations and drop them off to make sure every student makes it to where they need to go. The most important part is that every student makes it home the correct way each evening. Let's take a moment to reflect upon establishing classroom routines and procedures. Proverbs 22:6 relates a lot to establishing routines and procedures in the classroom by stating, "Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it." It is important to be clear with the procedures that you want to see happen in the classroom. Be consistent when teaching the routines. If you let something slide, students will take other opportunities to let them slide as well. You will also need to be patient. Students are still trying to adjust to the new setting. Cut them a break, but continue to be clear and consistent with what your expectations are. Do not be afraid to stop and reteach a routine. If what you are asking students to do is still not up to your satisfaction, review the procedure and expectations again. Allow students to practice the skills with you modeling beside of them. The overall goal of establishing the routines and procedures is to build students' independent levels so that they are able to do things on their own in the future. The results might not happen right away. Keep training them. They will eventually get it over time, so keep believing in them. Over the next couple of months, you and your students are going to be spending a lot of time together. You will become more like a family each day. The students will want to know a lot about you, and you will learn a lot about your students throughout listening to their stories and conversations. Building positive relationships with your students promotes a positive learning environment. It might take some time for students to open up to you. You can start to build relationships by getting to know your students, incorporating student interest into the lessons, using programs such as Capturing Kids' Hearts, and incorporating class meetings throughout the week. Hunter et al. 2023 emphasizes building a positive student-teacher relationships to promote an effective classroom. To begin building positive relationships within the class, start the year off by getting to know more about your students. The more students feel comfortable around you, the more likely they are to share out about themselves. There are multiple ways to learn about your students. You could plan games for the students to play that shares information about them. You could have students play the name game or bring items from home that begin with the first letter of their name for show and tell. You could also have students think about their favorite color or their favorite item to play with and give them a ball that they could pass around and share out with their interests with the class. You could also have students create all about me posters and display them in the hallway. From the posters, you will be able to gather information about your students' interests as well. Another suggestion and way to continue to learn about your students' interests is to make time throughout the week to have discussions with your students one-on-one. This can occur during small group rotations, where instead of pulling a group of students to a small group table to work, you could work with an individual student on their independent rotation activity. This will provide you time to work individually with the student on skills they need, but also to have conversations about the student to show that you care. You could also hold lunch bunch groups where a group of students could eat lunch with you for a day. If a student eats breakfast in the classroom, you could also have a conversation with them during that time as well. Once you have learned about some of your students' interests, you can incorporate them into a daily lesson plans. You can incorporate the interest when discussing vocabulary or math problems to make the learning connect back to the student. Scott's 2025 encourages to build student interest into lesson plans to encourage a growth mindset. This will also help increase participation and engagement within the lessons. One way to encourage students with lessons and strategies to promote a positive classroom environment is through Capturing Kids' Heart program. The program provides teachers with lesson plans that teach through the year and that encourages students to be mindful of others' feelings. The program provides professional developments to introduce teachers to the program and support teachers throughout the year. The program gives teachers strategies to use in the class meetings and incentive programs throughout the year. The program also supports students' social emotional skills through a variety of different lessons and allows students to explore and collaborate the same aged peers, how they would work through different situations. Capturing Kids' Hearts increases attendance rates and decreases behavior issues within the classroom. One of the main focuses of Capturing Kids' Heart is the class meetings and greetings. Teachers greet students every day at the door and allow students to select how they would like to be greeted. Here is a short video on a teacher using the meet and greet strategy. The other main focus of capturing kids' hearts is the class meetings. Class meetings should occur at least once a week for 20 to 30 minutes. Some teachers like to break up the class meetings throughout the week and make them about 10 to 15 minutes. During class meetings, a lot of information can be gathered from your students. During a class meeting, you can work on procedural items such as routines you have been noticing students struggling with throughout the day. You can also use this time to discuss problems students have been having in the class and discussing as a class strategies that can be used to resolve some of those challenges. Class meetings can also support students that struggle with communicating with peers or are nonverbal. It allows students to be able to relate to a topic and share what they know. Class meetings can also be used to teach social emotional skills or provide time for students to be able to communicate with other students. Some class meetings might also contain themes such as Wacky Wednesday to tell jokes or to allow students to share something weird they saw this week. This goal is to build a safe space for students to talk, share, and learn, and for their voice to have been heard. When looking at building positive relationships with students, Ephesians 4:2 came to mind as it states, "Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in a love." A lot of our students come in with a lot of baggage. For some students, coming to school is the safest and most exciting part of their day, and they dread going home. While students are at school, it is our job as their educators to make them feel safe and cared for. This might include being gentle with how we say things to students. The major takeaways for this section are to incorporate students' interest into daily lessons to increase engagement and participation, provide safe spaces for students to feel comfortable and to share information in the whole group or in a one-on-one setting, but also to offer a listening ear for students. Just remember, you might be the first smile they saw in the morning and the last person they speak to for the evening. We will now begin to looking at the behavior plans for the classroom environment. Throughout this section, we will discuss positive behavior initiatives, consequences for behaviors, supports that can be put in place for individual students, and staying consistent with behavior plans for all students. Booker 22 encourages us to motivate students in positive ways. If we encourage them, they will strive to be more to be recognized. Most schools focus on highlighting students' positive behaviors. It has been found that teachers that continue to praise the positive behaviors and acknowledge the students that are following directions correctly tend to have less classroom behaviors. Upon joining a new school, you will want to make yourself familiar with the school-wide behavior plan. You will also need to make yourself familiar with the grade level plan as well. School initiatives may include incentive dollars, school stores, or incentive activities. Incentives can be used in the physical form or in a digital form. In younger grades, teachers have found that giving students the physical copy of an incentive dollar is more beneficial than a digital copy. This is an instant way of rewarding students, and they may have a visual that their positive behaviors are being rewarded. Digital platforms that are used might not be accessible on all mobile devices. They may also be more challenging than handing out a dollar to the student and continuing on with instruction. Live School is a digital incentive system that rewards students' positive behaviors. Parents can also view students' Live School points to see how they are doing in school throughout the school day. Live School allows you to select the reason that you are rewarding students with the points. This data can be used to track student behavior as well as which can be beneficial for report cards. School stores can also be a part of the school-wide initiative. Students can use the dollars or points to trade them in for small trinkets or prizes from the store. This can also motivate students to work hard and show positive behaviors in the classroom. Another way that students could cash in their points or dollars is to offer school-wide incentives that students can earn, such as extra recess, assemblies, or dance parties. You can also do incentives on the classroom level as well. Some teachers may use dollars for students to buy items from a prize box. Other teachers have begun allowing students to purchase desk pets with different accessories to encourage positive behavior. Some teachers even allow students to buy out locations around their classroom, such as comfortable seating, sitting at the teacher's chair, or buying lunch for the teacher. Away from the incentive dollar theme, teachers may also use a culture being good box that students could earn a prize at the end of the week. The teacher catches a student doing something that's good. The teacher writes the student's name on a ticket and places it in the box. On Friday, the teacher can pick the student from a box to earn a prize. It is bound to happen that you will encounter a student that will have a rough day. You may try to stay as positive as you can, but this student is still having a rough time. This is when consequences will need to occur for the student. GoCalp and CAN 2021 discuss strategies of student behaviors and encourage highlighting students that demonstrate positive behaviors. To start, try to redirect the student by highlighting a positive behavior that you would like to see them mimic. If this does not help the situation, try calling a student over for a side-to-side conversation. Try to hear the student as to why they are displaying the behaviors and work together to come up with a solution. If the behavior still occurs, you may want to make a seat change. The behaviors may be caused by students the individual is sitting around. However, if the behavior consists, try sending home a note explaining the behaviors that occurred throughout the day. This allows the parents the opportunity to have a conversation with the child to see if there is anything different the child will tell them. This might provide a little more insight as to why the behaviors are occurring. If the behavior continues, you may also want to take a privilege away from a student or provide them a space to take a break. This makes the student aware that their behaviors are unacceptable and that they have time to reflect how they could change their behavior. If behaviors are severe, you may want to consult with a behavior interventionist or an administrator to discuss options and strategies to use with the student to support the behaviors within the classroom to keep all students safe. Some students will also need individualized behavioral supports to help them out throughout the day. In the primary ages, a first-then board can be beneficial for students to be able to see what their next activity will be. Students that struggle with routines and long segments of learning can use this strategy. This is a smaller version of a visual schedule, but also provides the student with a small break or reward that they can earn. For example, first we write a sentence and then we get a 5-minute Play-Doh break. This also allows students to have a choice throughout the day. Some students may also need a scheduled break away from the classroom. The student will be aware that this break will be coming shortly and that they need to have completed all of their work before they can go for their walk. This can be beneficial for students that are really active in the classroom and need different environmental settings. Like everything we do in education, it is also important to make sure that you are recording and tracking behavioral data as well as data for academics. Behavior trackers will help in assisting student support teams with roundabout times and behaviors that the student exhibits throughout the day. This will help when scheduling breaks and discussing the behavior supports that can be implemented into the classroom. Some students may also benefit from having a mentor within the school building. This might be a counselor, a former teacher, or an administrator that the student has connected with throughout their educational journey. The mentor can encourage the student and discuss behavioral expectations that can provide a reward for the student if the expectations are met. One way that mentors could encourage positive behaviors with students is to put them on a point sheet. The students could meet with their mentor each morning to establish the daily goal and prize or reward the student would like to earn. The teacher will track the behaviors throughout the day. The student will report to the mentor at the end of the day and discuss the report and receive their reward. To review this section on positive incentives and consequences for student behavior, highlight the positive behaviors in the classroom as much as possible. Nelson and Grorer, 2017, highlight positive behaviors whenever possible. Reward students that are making good choices using a school-wide or classroom incentive program. For students that exhibit behaviors outside of the classroom expectations, provide consequences that are acceptable by the school-wide or grade-level behavioral plans. Some students may require additional behavior supports to help them throughout the day and become more successful. Bonner, 2016, encourages teachers to see students past their labels. Highlight the good in each student, but still provide a consequence if needed. The most important part of having a successful classroom management is by staying consistent with positive praises and negative consequences. What you allow for one student, you must allow for all of your students. To conclude this section, Jeremiah 29:11 states, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope." By encouraging these positive behaviors, teachers can help in building students' character that can be beneficial to the student and their future. Another important area to address in the classroom is how a parent is going to be communicated with throughout the school year. There are a variety of ways out there that can be used to keep parents in the loop with how their child is doing in the classroom. One way to communicate with parents can be through a phone call. Sometimes it is easier to discuss student behavior issues or concerns over the phone rather than a note, email, or a text. These messages can sometimes be misinterpreted, and you will want to make the family feel a part of the situation and value their input on the matter. You could also offer suggestions on future supports for the child as well. Outside of texting, emailing, or sending home a note, you could also arrange an in-person meeting or a virtual meeting with the families. A virtual meeting can be beneficial alternative so that you are able to accommodate busy work and home life schedules. This will allow the families the opportunity to still see you and feel that their child's education is equally as important to you. Some schools have programs such as Seesaw or Remind that allows teachers and parents to message back and forth. This can be useful so that your personal information is not out for every parent to be able to contact you at all hours of the evening. Another way to keep families in the loop can be to send home a monthly calendar or a weekly newsletter to highlight what students will be learning, upcoming events, and reminders for the classroom. A behavior chart can also be added to the student's binder or folder for parents to stay in the loop about how their child's behavior is throughout the school day. I prefer to communicate with families at least once every 2 weeks through a message on Seesaw or Remind. This allows families to ask any questions or concerns that they may have about their child's graded work or questions they may have on an upcoming field trip. Open communication with families is a big part of making the child's educational journey successful. The last section in the classroom management plan will be the beginning stages of the planning process. Whitmer 2022 focuses on the planning process and how teachers that incorporate differentiated learning provides a positive effect on a child's educational experience. It is highly recommended that teachers use the backward design method to make sure that learning goals are being aligned with state standards and have a purpose. Within this process, it is also important for teachers to keep in mind what students are capable of doing. Siri Martini-Miliani et al. 2024 discusses differentiated instruction to meet the students on their level. Teachers will need to consider how they will differentiate instruction to meet the needs of all learners. This may include providing visual timers during independent and small group work times. This could also include providing students with texts that are on their instructional reading levels or sentence starters to begin a writing. This will also assist students with IEP and 504 plans because the teacher will have considered and put into place supports that will assist the students through the learning activity. The teacher could provide graphic organizers or pool the students in a small group to be able to support them better as well. These strategies can also help a variety of learners such as English language learners. Some students may also prefer to use a digital option to complete coursework. Teachers that keep in mind their students' preferred learning styles will be able to plan activities and lessons around these styles to increase student engagement. To wrap up this presentation of the Classroom Management Plan, I would like to take a minute to reflect upon the key topics that we discussed. We first looked into the setting up the classroom environment and making it a place where students feel welcomed. We also discussed about making sure that we are accommodating the space to meet the needs of all learners. Another key area that we discussed was the classroom routines and procedures and being consistent with the routines that are established. Setting up rules in the classroom can include a class contract so that students feel that they play a role in the expectations of the classroom. Try building positive relationships with students and families to make everyone's input feel valued. Students will also realize that parents and teachers are on the same page and will make students feel that both teachers and parents care about them. Behavior plans can be modeled through positive incentives or negative consequences depending on the student's behavior. It is also addressed in this section to stay consistent with behavior plans. What is expected for one student is expected for all students. We also discussed keeping parents in the loop by using a variety of different communication tools. Some parents will like one form of communication over another. Be flexible and willing to work with parents to keep them informed about their child's education. And lastly, we discussed planning with the end in mind. This will help with focusing on the end goal and differentiating instruction for your students to be able to support them to meet their learning goals. Before I end the presentation, please consider clicking on the link located in the description. This will take you to a survey. The survey will ask questions about strategies that you would like to incorporate in your classroom. Also, if you did not see a strategy that you use in your classroom that works well, please share this on the survey as well. Just like any educator, I enjoy learning about the new strategies and ways to implement in my own classroom. I look forward to hearing your feedback. Thank you.